My name is Jasmine Flores. I'm the Chief of Staff for Commissioner Dr. Elba Garcia in Dallas County. I love that Progress Texas works to engage our voters, our progressive voters, and really not just progressive voters. I think it's all about the messaging. They're very intentional about the messaging to try to allow people to understand that progressive means something that maybe they weren't aware of. It's trying to bring people in. It's telling a different story. It's letting it connect with voters in a different way. And I really appreciate the way that they spotlight the legislators that are really doing the work, that are fighting on behalf of all of us, not just Texas, but at the national level as well, to ensure that our rights don't continue to be stripped.
It's Tuesday, July 15th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Right about 100 people remain missing in the July 4th flood disaster in Texas as of this morning as the 11th day of recovery efforts begin, though the exact number of missing is hard to be certain about, according to officials. Kerr County Sheriff Larry Letha has estimated that the search for missing people could take up to 6 months, but there's a high degree of uncertainty there as well. Aiden Runnels of the Texas Tribune says the July 4th flood is already one of the deadliest natural disasters in Texas history, alongside the 1921 San Antonio floods that took 215 lives. These most recent floods could surpass that count, potentially making it the second most catastrophic natural disaster in our state's history, only after the devastating hurricane that struck Galveston all the way back in 1900. That storm claimed over 8,000 lives. The recovery period has not only been difficult for the folks working hard along the banks of these waterways, but also for the people who have been displaced from their homes and lives. The environmental journal grist.org reminds us that another notable occasion landed on the 4th of July this year: Donald Trump signing into law of the bill we affectionately refer to as the Big Bullshit Bill, which guts public food and health care safety nets, including the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and Medicaid, while also codifying massive tax breaks for wealthier individuals and major corporations, which makes the July 4th flood disaster in Texas the first to serve as a test of Trump's extensive disinvestment from disaster resilience programs and his administration's most recent food and hunger policies, which date before the Big Bullshit Bill. Charitable groups like food banks and pantries typically distribute food and water during crises like these, but due to recent policy and funding changes under the Trump administration, Central Texas food banks now have less food to distribute. Early in Trump's second term, the USDA cut funding for bonus commodities provided through the Emergency Food Assistance Program, a key source of food during climate disasters. This last March, the USDA also ended future funding for the Local Food Purchase Assistance and Local Food for Schools programs, which were set to distribute over $1 billion this fiscal year to support emergency food providers. In April, these funding cuts drove the Central Texas Food Bank in Austin to cancel 39 loads of food, the equivalent of 716,000 meals, which had been scheduled to be delivered through September. The state of Texas has already lost more than $107 million for programs that allowed food banks and schools to buy food locally because of the administration's funding cuts. The San Antonio Food Bank is in a similar fix. President and CEO Eric Cooper says that dating even before July 4th, quote, prior to this disaster, we just don't have the volume of food in our warehouse that we need to have. We're struggling to keep up. We have had to try to pivot a little bit to ration some of what we do have across the population we serve so that we can stretch. USDA cuts have made it harder to keep up. The flood will make it even more difficult, unquote, noting that cuts to SNAP from the Big Bullshit Bill, when they kick in, it looks likely they'll strain his organization's capacity beyond its breaking point. Meanwhile, in the U.S. Senate, Democrats in that body are calling for a probe into the cost control measures imposed by Trump Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and how those policies may have affected FEMA's response to the Texas floods. Senators Ruben Gallego of Arizona and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, in their letter to DHS Inspector General Joseph V. Kufari, say in part, quote, "We are deeply concerned that a new policy adding bureaucratic red tape needlessly delayed FEMA's response to the crisis and caused preventable loss of life and suffering. We owe it to the victims, their families, our constituents, and the American people to understand what went wrong to prevent future failures like this from happening again," unquote. Mose Bushell at KUT in Austin looked into stories that cloud seeding might have played a role in the July 4th deluge, and he finds that it did not. Experts say falsehoods like these are spreading faster than ever after natural disasters, which is anything but helpful for emergency planning and response efforts. And they didn't start with this disaster. Similar theories have made the rounds following deadly recent hurricanes, including Milton and Helene. It's apparently easier for some folks to buy into conspiracist make-believe than it is to come to terms with a scientifically sound narrative around human-influenced climate degradation, which is really what's behind these ever more intense weather events. We direct you to the show notes for a moving tribute in the Houston Chronicle to the young women at Camp Mystic working as counselors who stepped up huge for their even younger charges. Written by Catherine Wendlandt, who worked there as a counselor from 2014 to 2016 after having attended Camp Mystic for most of her youth. That piece includes a link which you can use to make a donation to the Kerr County Flood Relief Fund. That's in the show notes. Ford McCracken and Kara Mim at KXAN-TV in Austin note that as lawmakers began trickling back into Austin for the special session, some of them with considerable disdain, none of the 82 bills they've filed so far for that special session, which starts on Monday, have anything to do with the July 4th floods. Outlawing abortion medication, complete with a vigilante bounty plan? Yes. Expanding Ken Paxton's ability to cook up election fraud cases? Absolutely. More time wasted on debating Dan's ban on THC products? Of course. Even more tax on trans people. As the Houston Chronicle notes, the governor has pushed for a new run at a bathroom bill. But flood relief, infrastructure, policy, or procedure related to preventing another disaster like this, so far, no. We do see one thing that's interesting here. HB 73 would allow Texans to register to vote online through a secure portal. If that bill were to pass, Texas would join 43 other states and the District of Columbia with online voter registration. More likely will stick as one of the 7 who don't. Redistricting will definitely be on the Texas GOP wish list during this special session because Donald Trump commands it. If there's one thing Trump can't take, it's public humiliation. And he's watching a wave of embarrassment coming his way in the 2026 midterm, so he's looking to stack the deck to minimize the damage. California Governor Gavin Newsom has noticed, and he's mused about doing some redistricting of his own in California to benefit Democrats to offset what's happening here in Texas. But can he actually do that? Sophia Bolag at the San Francisco Chronicle says probably not. California's laws constrain Newsom from responding in kind to any efforts in Texas to redraw maps to favor Republicans. Voters in California took that power from the state legislature in 2008 and handed it to an independent redistricting commission, which draws the lines for California's congressional and state legislative districts. Though Newsom is correct that Democrats dominate the legislature, they do not dominate the redistricting commission. By law, it comprises 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 commissioners unaffiliated with either party. Sarah Sadwani is a politics professor at Pomona College in California. She's one of those Democrats on that commission, and she acknowledges that the insistence by California's voters for their state government to act with integrity may work against the Dems here. She says, quote, "I certainly understand and recognize that the balance of power hinges on redistricting. And when all states are not playing fair, the fact that California does puts Democrats at a disadvantage," unquote. That reminds us of a recent appearance by Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett on comedian Hassan Minaj's YouTube channel entitled, "When Will Democrats Get Mad?" Well, they're already mad. To me, the real question is, when will they get out of their own way and do something? Solid watch. See the show notes for that as well. Finally, Governor Abbott is probably happy that MAGAville is up in arms right now about Trump shutting down the Jeffrey Epstein thing. Otherwise, there might be more attention on the fact that Governor Abbott is going way out of his way not to disclose email conversations between himself and billionaire Texas transplant Elon Musk. Beatrice Noland at Fortune magazine says that legitimate routine efforts by ProPublica, the Texas Newsroom, and the Texas Tribune to get their hands on these emails have been vexed by the governor, who cites privacy concerns about what they themselves are calling intimate and embarrassing content. Well, hell. Now we gotta see him. Those journalists are still trying. The governor's office has pledged to comply with the Texas Public Information Act pending a decision on all of this, which is being made by Ken Paxton. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, which is funded by oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups, all while fact-based independent media outlets increasingly face threats to their funding. While access to those outlets is frequently free, as it is here at Progress Texas, It takes listener support to keep fact-based independent media going. If you've come to appreciate what we do, now more than ever, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Cherie Allen, John Arnsparger, and Hannah Banks, all of whom have joined the team lately. We appreciate all of you very much. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.